Well, not exactly the chaotic weekend that some might expect in a November Saturday. But with that being said, we had big games. We had big moments. We had coaches, interim coaches crying. We had coaches getting fired. And we're going to talk about it here. No intro video because there is a copyright with it in the broadcast. So I'm going to put together a new intro video at the very least by the time we hit the preview weeks for the New Year's Six Bowls and the playoffs specifically. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoy this content. Okay, restart. 3, 2, 1. Well, the chaos didn't exactly come in on Saturday, but we are here as college football fans, ready to discuss the biggest stories. Hello, everybody. I am Colin Bashnigel here. You can find me on TikTok. Bash's CFB show is where you can find me. Comment, like, and subscribe. That's what I want to see here. And specifically, I want to see your comments. I want to see opinions. And if you go over to that TikTok that I talked about, there's a lot of conversation happening there. Because remember, guys, opinion plus discussion equals community. Let's try to build a college football community with what we do here on YouTube. Not too many people who are trying to be in media really have a community. I think no matter how big I can get and how big my dreams can get, I never want to lose touch with the college football community. 100%. Real quick, you can find me on Twitter, bash_CFB. And if you want to live talk to me while I'm recording these videos, you can go over to Twitch when I'm recording bash_CFB. All right, no further interruption needed. Let's talk about Michigan beating Penn State. Now let's talk about the game first before we talk about the off the field stuff. Multiple on both sides of things. There's some off the field stuff. 24-15, Michigan wins this game. Now, a lot of people are driving this narrative that they did not throw the ball because they didn't need to. That's not true at all. They dropped back to throw the first two possessions, and they realized they couldn't contain the pass rush. Even Joel Klatt was talking about that on his podcast that he had posted. Excuse me. So I think a lot of people need to realize here with this Michigan team that they are one that has a certain type of limitation, but they can also look to many different places for them to find success. This defense is elite, for example, and as long as this defense is able to contain other offenses enough, Michigan's going to have a fighting chance in every single game that they play. J.J. McCarthy has been a pretty solid quarterback this season. He's not a Heisman-worthy quarterback. I won't miss hearing that at the end of this show. Like, I don't want to hear that he's a Heisman contender anymore at the end of the show. So, with that being said, 7 for 8, 0 pass attempts outside of a pass interference, which was negated. So, no pass attempts that counted, that J.J. McCarthy threw over 10 yards. He had a couple of screenplays, a couple of little hitch patterns, a couple of check downs, a couple of out routes. For the most part, there was a sense that the ball didn't travel 10 yards for a reason. And I think a big part of the reason is not because of trust in J.J. McCarthy. I feel like that has maybe a little bit to do with it, but I think you don't trust him to make the right decisions when he's frustrated and flustered with everything going on as well, to add to the emotion of this game. So if you continue trying to throw the ball and Carson Barnhart over here is getting smoked and Ladarius Henderson over here is getting smoked on the offensive line, JJ's under pressure all day long. JJ's getting banged up all day long. So what do? I don't care if it's first down, second down, third down. I don't care the yardage. We're running the football. And in the second quarter, that worked. Penn State did not adjust, did not account for that. Penn State thought that Michigan would get to what they had talked about getting to, which is a little bit more reliant on the throw game. And that's why it seemed like early on this was going to be really competitive. And then Michigan started running the ball. In the second quarter, dominant running the ball. Second half, not so much. You can miss me with this. They dominated them. They ran for 230. Okay, last year in Ann Arbor, that was domination on the ground. They ran for 418 last year, not 230. It was half the production almost of what they had last year. this wasn't a domination to that extent, like Michigan fans are acting like it, but you still won a really tough game against one of the best defenses in the country on the road without your head coach. Why can't you just take that for what it is, Michigan fans? That's my big question to you. Why can't you just take that for what it is? And if you could do that, then maybe you wouldn't be clowned on America's team. But, props to them. Great win. Their defense is spectacular. Their secondary is amazing. That, run game for Penn State did get going a little bit, but you're nitpicking if you're trying to complain about Michigan there. Now, I want to transition about talking about the off-the-field stuff. And Sharon Moore's post-game interview is getting a lot of press, and this is what my good old reliable podcast, Menace to Sports, was saying about this earlier.
Like what? It almost felt like he felt guilty because he was way more involved with the sign stealing than Jim Harbaugh, and it felt like he felt bad.
Menace to Sports, get all the credit over there. You can check it out. Former Ohio State coach Zach Smith, disgrace, whatever, or disgrace, pardon me, whatever. Sharon Moore may or may not have felt guilty, and I felt like that was a very interesting take that Zach Smith had on that post-game interview. Okay? One thing is for sure. I kind of like the fact that Michigan is doing what they can do in this situation and playing the underdog and flipping that narrative and being able to give an extra chip on their shoulder to a team that otherwise could be complacent. Now, with that being said, all you Michigan fans out there trying to do the same thing, your team is not the victim. Quit acting like you're the victim. I'm talking to the fans, not the players, not the coaches. That's what they should do, is prop themselves up like this and be like us against the world type of mentality. For example, like for the record, I don't think the players or coaches need validation from their fans. Neither did Ohio State when they did the whole Ohio against the world. It always will be Ohio against the world type of thing against Notre Dame. That was all about them. That was all about that locker room. And this is all about them. And this is all about this locker room. So for you Michigan fans being loud out there, acting like you're involved or whatever in this, you're not, okay? This is not, you're just a fan at the end of the day. And you guys regurgitating this bet stuff. First off, I don't know what that bet stuff really is. Bet. If Michigan wants to act like in a game that they were favored by 4.5 is changing anybody's mind about them, that's fine. Create the narrative in the locker room the same way that Kirby Smart in Georgia did last year. That's fine. But for you fans to come look at me and act like you were doubted in this game, I picked you. Everybody picked you. I know like one person who picked Penn State. Two. I'm sorry. Somebody on like Big Noon or Game Day or something picked Penn State. Or Josh Pate picked Penn State. That's actually who I'm thinking of. You're not the victim. Stop acting like you're the victim. You cheated, and somebody's needing to get punished. Should Sharon Moore and Jesse Minter be punished? Not my take. I have a whole video on what I thought of the punishment. I made it on Friday. There you go. You can go look at it. Now on the Penn State side of things, they fire Mike Yurcich. We'll see what Jawan Sider, I think it's Jawan Sider, has in store as the play caller for the last 3 games. I'm assuming he's going to be the play caller in the bowl game. I really think that Mike Yurcich's firing is a little bit overdue, but I also feel like not too many teams have a rising star in Jawan, like Jawan Sider on their staff, and we'll see what happens there. Florida State survives their rivals. This was an ugly game, too, in which you had Emory Williams starting at quarterback, and he gets hurt, a bad injury. Tyler Van Dyke comes in, throws a pick. Quarterback play wasn't great, and yet Florida State still struggles to a victory. the struggle that they had in this game to be able to pull away, very concerning for me with Florida State. They're still undefeated. They're still doing great. They're still win and get in mode. But, like, you can't convince me that this team deserves to be ahead of Washington at the very least right now. Washington, speaking of, guts out a very, very gritty win against Utah. And they held Utah to, I think, 0 points in the second half. They had that weird pick six, fumble at the 1, recovered by Utah, then turned into a safety that got us to the final score of 35-28. Michael Penix Jr. was good in this game yet again. He's been good. It clearly shows how bad the rush defense was for USC because obviously Dylan Johnson didn't get off the same way that he did in that game. And this Utah offense got what they needed in the first half, but the second half they were completely shut down, and you got to give Washington a lot of props. But not forget, that interception, even though they didn't score a touchdown off of that, they didn't technically capitalize, that still flipped the field. That got Utah pinned back at the 1. You got a safety, and you were able to run some clock up by 7, and you survived a gutty, just gritty win against Utah. And props to Kalen DeBoer, 111 as the head coach, or as a head coach in college football. Missouri dominates Tennessee. I did not expect them to dominate like this, but this defense really showed up this was their defense's best game, and I thought this team could be really good, and I got clowned on for saying they're going 9-3. Maybe I should have been clowned on for not taking them to go 10-2. This is a really good Missouri team, guys. Georgia's dominance, oh my gosh. If another person tries to tell me that anybody but Georgia should be the number 1 team in America right now, I don't know what you're doing. 2-time defending national champ. Oh, the last couple of years don't matter. When you're talking about a program like this, it does matter. And now they beat a top 10 team 52-17. This wasn't close past like the first quarter. Like, what are we doing here? Georgia deserves to be the number 1 team until it's taken from them. I've said that from the preseason. I'm saying it now. They look like the best team right now. It is what it is. I know a lot of people are tired of Georgia. I'm not necessarily tired of Georgia. I'm appreciating their dominance. Speaking of dominance, Ohio State dominates. McCourt and Marv both shine in that game that I was at. Yeah, I was very impressed with Kyle McCord. And again, for anybody wanting to be a casual and say, it's just Michigan State. No, you got to look at the location of the ball, the touch, the accuracy that he had in this game. Much better than any other game. I saw him play against Youngstown State. I saw him play against Indiana. I saw him play in person against Youngstown State and Maryland and Penn State. And it wasn't this. Now, what I will say, though, was this just one great night for Kyle McCord? I think he's getting better and better as the season goes on. He didn't throw any throws that could have been a turnover, which is a first all year. I like what Kyle McCord is doing in this game. I like the improvement he's had. He's got to stack those performances, play well against Minnesota heading into the game to have that confidence and have that reassurance with his team to be able to click going into the Michigan game. USC drops 4th game at Oregon. So the 4th game that Lincoln Riley and the squad lost in this brutal, brutal stretch. I talked about the stretch in the preseason. I talked about the stretch around their bye. I said that they're not going to go through it with one loss. I said they would have multiple losses. Turns out, again, I was a little bit less right than I should have been. 4th loss right here. Really good USC team, I think, if they just had a defense, and specifically if they were better coached on defense. Jane Daniels, Heisman, we got to talk about this. There has been no player in college football history go for 350 pass yards, 200 rush yards, and he had, 5 total touchdowns? 6? I mean, I don't care what his team's record is. We gave the Heisman to Lamar Jackson. We gave the Heisman to RG3. Why are we refusing to give it to Jaden Daniels? This was his Heisman moment. Keep in mind, I get Florida's not great, but keep in mind that this was still Florida. This was still a Power 5 football team who have beaten other Power 5 football teams. Florida's not that bad. And even if it's against Weber State, that's still kind of crazy, let alone being a Power 5 opponent with a lot of talent. And they needed every bit of it because, again, their defense sucks. And he's been putting up numbers like this all year long. His defense sucks. They were toe-to-toe with Alabama for the most part. Alabama pulled away a little bit. He got hurt when they were trying to give that last-ditch effort. Jane Daniels, Heisman, I'm with it. Oklahoma offense back on track. The way that they manhandled West Virginia, got down 7-0 early, absolutely hammered them. And their defense looked really good too, and that is of note. They lost to Oklahoma State on the road. They lost to Kansas on the road. Those back-to-back road trips really got them. And it sucks because it takes Oklahoma out of the playoff picture. If they would have just won one of those two games, they'd be in the thick of it. But they're not anymore, but they're still in the thick of the Big 12 race. And now they're back on track. And as long as they just control their part, they just got to sit there and hope that they can take advantage of the chaotic Big 12 and be able to bounce their way into the Big 12 championship somehow. Texas, speaking of the Big 12, survives a late rally. This is the only thing Texas can do at the end of the day. They get up big. They let teams come back. It doesn't matter. They just need to find ways to win, especially with, number one priority needs to be for Texas, the Big 12. Regardless of college football playoff and stuff outside of your control, if you just take care of the Big 12, let the rest of them figure it out. Because winning the Big 12 is still something Texas hasn't done since 2009, 2008, 2009. I can't remember. Yeah, it was 2009. They played Bama in the championship. They need to just be focused on winning that Big 12, and all this playoff talk needs to be set aside. They have nobody in the Heisman conversation, these postseason awards. None of it matters. Texas just needs to focus on them and focus on winning for themselves. And final story here, Jimbo out. First off, I do want to mention the opponent that they played, Mississippi State, after A&M won 51-10. Zach Arnett, 4-6 right now. He was dealt a terrible hand. I don't know why Mississippi State did this to a young coach who's just not ready. Just not ready for this position. And I also don't know why you wouldn't just let him finish out the regular season. Firing him this prematurely makes no sense. It's his first year as basically an interim. That's what it was. Just let him finish it out with the guys. They've been through so much together. I don't like how they handle that. But how A&M handled Jimbo is the best you could with the situation that you got put in. A lot of people are wondering about the timing of this firing, but the problem is here, guys. If they go and beat LSU to end the year, if they win out, then it's going to be a lot harder to justify firing Jimbo. Harder answers for the team, harder answers for the coaches, harder answers for the fan base. It's just easier now. Everybody gets it. Everybody gets it, even after a 51-10 victory against an SEC West foe. That's just the bottom line. So, right guy out. Who's going to be the guy in? I kind of think Urban Meyer is there. I also definitely think Mike Elko, though, is probably the odds-on favorite. Bring him back. He was their defensive coordinator there. He has a great defense at Duke. He's been doing a fantastic job. I think Mike Elko is the guy that's going to end up at Texas A&M. The idea of Urban Meyer being there is very intriguing to me, and that's being floated out there, but I really like the idea of Mike Elko as well. Walk that line this week. How did we do to close out this show? And again, I apologize as my voice was kind of scrappy there, and I just wanted to do anything I could to try to make it a little bit better there in the middle of talking. So Penn State, Michigan, the under hit. It was pretty comfortable, even if it got close towards the end. I never really thought that would waver, especially when Michigan recovered the onside kick. I'm like, yeah, we're good. The under is going to hit. Keep in mind, I thought this was going to be a defensive battle, and that's exactly what it was. Boston College plus 1.5. Man, you let me down. But Charlotte taking Memphis to overtime, they covered. And then NC State covered They won by 20 against Wake Forest. So 3-1 on the first slide there. Then we get Iowa -1. They won by 22. Oklahoma State, what are we doing, man? 45-3. First, I just want 2 narrow spreads that I took, and I got NC State right, and I got a couple other narrow spread like Iowa right. But these 2 narrow spreads, Boston College getting blown out against Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State somehow getting blown out against UCF. This is one of the worst rush defenses in America, and Ollie Gordon couldn't get going. That makes no sense. But again, I took Missouri +1.5. I took them win outright. They dominated. So props to me for that one too. So through this, by the way, we are sitting at on the week 3-1, 5-2. This last slide, a little bit rough. I felt like early on I was pretty comfortable with the North Carolina Duke take. It didn't end up working out for me, and I'm okay with that because of how that game finished. It was such a classic. I wish Duke would have pulled it off, but props to North Carolina for getting a tough victory. Ohio State also, this was really the one that got away out of the losses. Jaden Fielding in the fourth quarter misses a field goal that would have got 41. Ohio State could have scored 60 on Michigan State. I was there. I saw it. They could have scored 60 on Michigan State. They decided to mail it in the second half. Marv had that one big catch, and then he was done for the night in the third quarter. Yeah, I mean, that's all I got for you. USC +15, easily hit. Well, I don't know about easily, but they were able to get the late cover. They were down by 15, and then they scored, went for 2 early. Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable with it. So 6-4 on the week. Not a bad week. Not as good as the 8-2 we had the week before. I am curious to see what this slate has ahead for me this upcoming week. Coming up here in the next 24 hours, another top 25 video. Be ready for the lookout with that. Again, sorry this is a little bit sketchy. I don't think I'm going to do that. I was going to do the top 25 video right after this, but because of my voice, I want to give it a little bit of a break. So I think I'm going to do that tomorrow. Make sure you guys tune into that.